It's not really how you start. It's not about a leg.
Years ago, I got my first paid gig in the industry. So I am celebrating a 30-year work anniversary this week. And so I just wanted to jump on. Hello, everyone. Hello. Hey, everybody, share this news with you. This week, 30 years ago, I got a call that changed my life. I got a call to, at the last minute, in fact, go and meet at Madison Square Garden for a gig. I was not told who the gig was with. It was a last minute call, simply was just asked, can you be at the garden at 3 o'clock? And if so, wear all black. So I said yes. So fast forward, get to the garden. Rehearsal starts at 3 o'clock. We're in a room rehearsing. It's an ensemble. It was the Daryl Douglas Ensemble, actually. Daryl is now deceased. But he called and we came, and an 18-year-old Kelly Price showed up at Madison Square Garden, went into this rehearsal room with my other friends who sang with him, and we start rehearsing George Michael songs. We were going on with George Michael. That was my first paid performance, and that was 30 years ago this week. And so rest in peace, George Michael. It's where I got my start, my very first gig. And George, being under the Sony umbrella, a very talented young woman from Long Island who was a new artist, was nominated for several Grammys, I believe, that year, and also had to perform, and she wanted a gospel group behind her for that performance. And having just done George Michael, we got that call. So my second engagement was with the incredible, the talented, the beautiful Mariah Carey. Thank you, Mariah Carey. I spent 92, 93, 94, 95, 96. Matola, hey Tommy, how are you? Thank you, sir. Tommy Matola approached and introduced himself, and he says, you're a star. And I'm like, okay, y'all gotta remember, I'm fresh out of Edgemere Projects at 18 years old. Big mouth, don't have a whole lot of tact. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, thank you. He said, what do you think about, would you wanna come work for Mariah? And I'm like, is he kidding? And he wasn't. So again, me not having a whole lot of tact, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do it, but I don't go anywhere without my sister, so you have to hire the both of us. I was stupid, right? But no, that's the way we rolled. So he was like, that's fine. I was like, first of all, the way we sound together, I'm telling you, like, that would be the sound. So he hired us. My next engagement with Mariah Carey was then at the now record-breaking and phenomenal MTV Unplugged. That was a series back in the day for those of you who were not born in the early 90s and perhaps have never heard of what MTV Unplugged was. It was an incredible show. They should absolutely bring it back. Performed at her now like legendary MTV Unplugged performance. So again, a very pregnant 18-year-old Kelly Price took the stage for the first time officially as a Mariah Carey background singer. There was a group there as well, and it was all of my friends from the Daryl Douglas Ensemble with Mariah for Trey Lorenz's album. Sang on Trey's album, Backgrounds. Took my first trip with Mariah in June of 1992 to London to perform. She had a press run, performed for Top of the Pops, and life has never, ever been the same since then. 48 years old I am now. That's a long time, right? 30 years later, here I sit. I exclusively toured with Mariah from 92 until 96, and in 1996, had the opportunity, the story is too long, I will say that to meet Stevie J, Stephen Evan Jordan. I'd come to the studio to meet him to discuss, honestly, I just wanted to start placing songs that I had been written and move into another arena, even if it wasn't to be an artist, even though I felt like I wanted to be. If it wasn't to be an artist, at least to be able to write music and to produce and that kind of thing. And so went to Daddy's house to meet with Stevie, and almost in identical fashion, we got to talking about church, because he's a PK too. For those of you who know him, you know that he is a preacher's kid. So he started playing this song by Vanessa Bell Armstrong, Faith That Can Conquer Anything. I actually recorded that on my Grace project last year. And Puffy walked in the room while I was singing. And almost identical, when I didn't realize that he was there. My back was to him and my eyes was closed. My eyes were closed. I was completely engulfed in the song. Finished the song. Puffy walked back in the room and says, "Hi, how are you?" I'm Puffy. I'm like, "Hey, yeah, I know who you are. Hi, nice to meet you." He asked Stevie to step out of the room for a second. So Stevie stepped out of the room. "Hi, guys." I'm caught up and I'm trying not to cry. And Stevie came back in. He asked Stevie to get me to sing again so he could hear more of me. And so Stevie did that. Came in, started playing something else. And I started singing. And while I was singing this time, Puffy walked in the room so that I could see him while I was singing. And he shook my hand and he said, "I've never heard anyone sound like that before." And in my mind, the Edgemere Project chick, with not a lot of tact, but a little bit more sense. Well, more tact than I had at 18 and more sense. In my mind, I'm saying, "You're right, he hears people sing all the time. Like, really, duh, but whatever, okay." He's spitting producer game. He's spitting record company executive game. By this time, I had been in the business since 92. It was 1996. Kind of knew the lingo. He said, "That's great. You sing?" I said, "He's obviously you sing." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, do you write?" I said, "Yeah, of course I write." So he says, "Follow me." He walked, okay, I'm trying to make sure that I thank everybody along the way. So Stevie, thank you so much. I appreciate you. You are etched in the history of Kelly Price forever. Before a friend of mine, because that moment was facilitated through you. So thank you for being obedient to God and inviting me to the studio that day, because again, it was another life-changing moment for me, guys. Okay, so Puffy tells me to walk in the room, to follow him to this room. So we go into a session that was actually happening at that time, and it was a young guy group. And so he interrupted the session, called the guys out of the booth, and said to the engineer, "Throw on a beat for me." And so I'm trying to read you guys. Comments. I got to keep telling the story, or else I'm gonna get caught up. He says to the engineer, "Here, I want you to throw on a beat." And so he looks at me. He says, "So you say you're right?" I said, "Yeah, I write." So he said, "Okay." Told the engineer, "Throw the beat on, raw beat. No, not like barely any chords. It's mostly, y'all know, it's hip hop. It's bad boy. It's the 90s. So it's very rhythmic, not a lot of music." So I said, "Okay." I grabbed a pen and a piece of paper off of the desk in the control room, and I started scribbling some stuff. And Puffy snatched the pen out of my hand and snatched the pad out of my hand and said, "No, you're a writer. Write." My whole insides were shaking. All of my insides were shaking. So I couldn't tell you what I sang that day. I couldn't tell you what I said. I started any word that came to my head. I sang the word and just put a little stank on it. I was like, maybe he won't be able to tell that I'm really just trying to, because I don't consider myself a freestyler. I can ad-lib freestyle very, very well. But he tried me that day. And I'm grateful that I didn't allow myself to be intimidated in the moment and say, "No, I need the pen and the piece of paper." He challenged me by taking the pen and the paper And I gave him what I had, and it was the best that I could give on the spur of a moment. And I tried to make it sound as pretty as I possibly could. And apparently he was impressed. I thought I was a hot mess, but he was impressed, and he was like, I really would like to, look into working with you some more. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, no problem. So we exchanged information that day. He said, I'm gonna give you a call. I said, okay, thank you. Then he introduced me to the guys that were in the room who were all freaking out listening to me sing. And this as yet unnamed group had just gotten signed to Bad Boy. You now know them as 112. I met them as the 4 young men who didn't have a name yet in the session that day. So shout out to 112. You are very much so ingrained in the early stages of Kelly Price as a songwriter, producer, and solo career girl. Love you guys. Okay, moving forward. Okay. So Puff, literally in my mind, I'm saying, okay, he said he's gonna call. He's not gonna call. 24 hours later, my beeper. Young kids, do not be disrespectful. I had a beeper back in the day when you literally spelled out word.
It would be Whitney's final.